One simple change in your orchid care routine can turn a struggling plant into a year-round blooming masterpiece. Care of Orchid for producing new roots and flowers all year round. Orchids are often seen as delicate, high-maintenance plants, but the truth is that once you understand their basic needs, they become one of the most rewarding houseplants you can grow. Across the United States, more beginners are choosing orchids for their elegant shapes, long-lasting blooms, and surprisingly adaptable nature. The key difference between an orchid that only blooms once and one that keeps producing new roots, new leaves, and flowers all year round is not luck. It is consistent care, mindful watering, proper lighting, and a little understanding of how orchids live in nature. Orchids are not like regular potted plants that grow in heavy soil in the ground. In the wild, most common house orchids, especially Phalaenopsis and similar varieties, grow attached to tree bark in humid forests. Their roots are exposed to air, gentle rain, and filtered sunlight. This natural environment is the blueprint for everything you do at home. When you recreate these conditions in a smart and simple way, your orchid responds with healthy root growth and dependable blooms. Let's start with the foundation, because everything depends on it. Orchid roots are different from typical plant roots. They are thick, slightly green or silver, and covered in a layer called velamen, which absorbs moisture and nutrients from the air and water. These roots need oxygen just as much as water. When orchids are potted in dense soil or watered too often, the roots suffocate and rot, leading to yellow leaves, slow growth, and no flowers. When potted properly, the roots breathe, stretch, and actively grow. For beginners in the USA, the easiest potting setup is a clear plastic orchid pot with plenty of drainage holes placed inside a decorative outer pot. The clear pot lets you see the root color and moisture level. Healthy roots are bright green when wet and silvery when dry. This color change tells you exactly when to water and when to wait. Instead of following a strict schedule, you learn to read what your orchid is telling you. Light is another crucial piece of year-round flowering. Orchids love bright, indirect light. In a typical American home, the best place is near an east-facing or south-facing window with sheer curtains. Too little light results in dark green, floppy leaves and no blooms. Too much direct sun burns the leaves, leaving yellow or brown patches. The perfect light creates a strong but gentle green leaf color, slightly lighter than grass but not yellow. When the light is right, your orchid stores the energy needed to build new roots, new spikes, and new flowers again and again. Watering is where most people make mistakes, and where the greatest transformation can happen if done correctly. Orchids are not thirsty plants, but they also do not want to be bone dry for too long. In most U.S. climates with indoor heating or air conditioning, a good general rhythm is watering once every 7 to 10 days. However, the real rule is this: only water when the potting mix is almost completely dry and the roots have turned silvery. If they are still green, wait. When you water, do it thoroughly. Take the orchid to the sink and run lukewarm water gently through the pot for about 30 seconds to 1 minute. Let the water flow out freely. Never let the pot sit in standing water. This soaking and draining method mimics a rain shower in the orchid's natural habitat, allowing the roots to fully hydrate while still getting oxygen once the excess drains away. Humidity is another big factor in root production and flowering success. Orchids love humidity between 50% and 70%. Many American homes are much drier, especially in winter when heaters are running. Dry air leads to shriveled aerial roots, slow growth, and buds dropping before they open. One of the easiest solutions is to place a humidity tray under the pot. Fill a shallow tray with pebbles and add water just below the top of the stones. As the water evaporates, it adds moisture around the plant without soaking the roots. Grouping plants together can also naturally raise humidity. Temperature also plays a quiet but powerful role. Most indoor orchids prefer daytime temperatures between 70 degrees F, 80 degrees F, and nighttime temperatures around 60 degrees F, 70 degrees F. That slight drop at night is actually a signal for many orchids to start producing flower spikes. If your orchid looks healthy but never blooms, try placing it in a slightly cooler spot at night for a few weeks. Even a small 5 to 10 degree difference can trigger flowering behavior. Now, let's talk about feeding your orchid for lush growth. Because orchids grow in bark and not regular soil, they depend on you for nutrients. Use a balanced orchid fertilizer, such as 20 or one specifically labeled for orchids. During active growth in spring and summer, fertilize every 2 weeks at half strength. In fall and winter, reduce to once a month or even pause if the plant is resting. Always water the orchid lightly before fertilizing to prevent burning the roots. You don't need complicated products or expensive supplements. Consistency matters more than strength. A gentle but regular feeding schedule helps the orchid build new roots, strengthen leaves, store energy, and prepare for repeated flowering cycles. Pruning your orchid is not about cutting everything back, but about smart trimming. Once an orchid flower spike finishes blooming and turns brown, you can cut it off near its base with clean scissors. This tells the plant to shift energy toward new root and leaf growth instead of trying to revive an old spike. If the spike is still green, you have 2 options. You can cut it back to just above a visible node to encourage a side branch and possibly more blooms, or you can leave it alone and let it decide. Both choices work depending on the health and size of the plant. Dead roots should also be gently removed during repotting. Healthy roots feel firm. Dead roots are brown, mushy, and hollow. Removing them prevents rot from spreading and gives space for new roots to form. Repotting is another important part of continuous growth and blooming. Most orchids should be repotted every 18 months to 2 years. Over time, the bark breaks down and becomes too compact, holding too much moisture. This chokes the roots. When you notice the bark looking powdery or the roots overflowing the pot, it is time. The best moment to repot is when you see new root tips starting to grow. Those bright green points mean the orchid is ready to settle into new media. Gently remove the old bark. Trim dead roots and place the plant into fresh orchid bark mix. This step alone can transform a tired, silent orchid into a thriving, blooming one. Now let's address common problems and simple solutions that every beginner in the USA can master. If your orchid's leaves are turning yellow, the most likely causes are overwatering, poor drainage, or too much direct sunlight. Check the roots immediately. If they are brown and mushy, cut out the damaged parts and let the plant dry more between waterings. If the roots look healthy, move the plant slightly out of direct sun. If the blooms fall off quickly or buds drop before opening, the environment is usually too dry or too unstable. Sudden temperature changes, cold drafts from windows in winter, hot air from heaters, or dry air from air conditioners can shock the buds. Keep your orchid in a stable, comfortable location and increase humidity gently. If the orchid refuses to bloom, even though it looks healthy, it needs more light or a slight nighttime temperature drop. Try moving it closer to a brighter window or allowing cooler air at night for a few weeks. If you see wrinkled leaves, the orchid is usually dehydrated, even if the potting mix feels damp. This happens when roots are damaged and cannot absorb water. In this case, repotting and trimming dead roots, combined with careful watering, can encourage new root growth. If you notice white cotton like bugs or tiny moving dots, your orchid may have mealybugs or spider mites. These are easily handled by wiping the leaves with a cotton pad dipped in diluted alcohol or insecticidal soap. Repeat every few days until they disappear. A healthy orchid is not just measured by its flowers. Strong roots, firm green leaves, and steady growth are signs that blooms are on the way. When you focus on building a strong foundation, the flowers naturally follow. Growing orchids for year-round roots and blooms is a habit, not a miracle. With consistent care, awareness, and patience, your orchid becomes more than a plant. It becomes a living rhythm in your home, responding to your touch and your attention. As you continue learning, observing, and adjusting your care, your confidence grows too. The plant that once seemed fragile becomes one of the easiest, most rewarding companions in your indoor garden. And this is only the beginning. As your orchid settles into its routine, you will start noticing subtle but beautiful changes. A fresh shine on the leaves, tiny new roots peeking out of the bark, and eventually a spike slowly rising from the base. These quiet signs mean the system you created is working. Orchids are slow growers, but they are honest plants. When they are happy, they clearly show it. Air circulation is another silent hero in the success of orchids. In nature, orchids enjoy constant gentle air movement. At home, this can be recreated by placing them in an open room where air flows or using a fan on a very low, indirect setting. Fresh air prevents fungal infections and allows the leaves to breathe, which improves overall plant strength and reduces the risk of disease. Seasonal awareness is important too. In spring and summer, orchids focus on growing leaves and roots. This is when you reinforce stronger watering and gentle, consistent fertilizing. In fall and winter, growth may slow. This is normal. This resting time does not mean your plant is dying. It simply means it is storing energy for the next blooming season. Respect this rhythm and avoid overwatering during this restful phase. For those who want year-round flowers, the secret is balance, not forcing. Artificial light can be a powerful tool in northern U.S. regions where natural sunlight is limited in winter. A small LED grow light placed about 12 inches above the plant for 10-12 hours a day can keep the growth active and support blooming even in colder seasons. Choosing the right water also makes a difference. If your tap water is heavily treated or hard, it can slowly damage sensitive orchid roots. Using filtered water or rainwater at room temperature can significantly improve root development and long-term health. Orchids also love stability. Constantly moving them from place to place confuses the plant and can delay blooming. Once you find a comfortable, bright, safe spot, let your orchid stay there and adjust to its environment. Some orchid owners talk to their plants, and while science may smile at this, there is truth in the idea of attention. When you regularly look at your orchid, you notice changes sooner. You respond quicker to problems. You adjust care faster. This awareness becomes the strongest tool you own. Orchids teach patience. They teach observation. They teach respect for natural timing. And when they bloom, sometimes for months at a time, it feels like a personal gift from nature. By learning this process and repeating it with care, you are not just growing flowers. You are creating a peaceful, living connection inside your home. And now it is time to take this knowledge and turn it into action. Grow with Nature Nurture Hub. Subscribe to my YouTube channel and join a growing community of plant lovers who believe in patience, beauty, and the power of nature. Every new leaf, every new root, and every bloom is a reminder that growth is always possible when care is given. If you love learning about seasonal flowering plants, gardening tips, and nature care, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Nature Nurture. Hub your home for year-round garden inspiration. Let's keep growing together.